Hey guys, how's it going? Today we got a video called 7 Things Not to Do with Your Bass Guitar. Alright then, so we thought we'd have a little bit of fun here. We've been miking up some cabs here in Stink on Lime, England, wherever the fuck we are. What's the name of the town?
Stink Online. That's like AOL, but for British people. It's Ashton_Line. This is Hot Pole Studios. Hello, everybody.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we've got Adam Steele here from the Hot Pole Studios channel, and we're coming from lovely Spunk on Lime channel or town, whatever the fuck this is, just somewhere outside Manchester. Remember, if you're not a Mank, you're a wank. And anyway, we're talking about just some errors to avoid when being a bass player, because Adam's actually the world's smartest bass player. He learned how to tie his shoes.
Careful now, I am wearing slip-ons.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, you have been wearing those. I was wondering what was up with that. Anyway, we've got the line, or we've got the list down here. So we're just gonna go over them one by one. I can't fucking read because I'm old. Here, move it over here so I can see.
There you go. So yeah, just a background for everybody. I've been a professional bass player for the best part of 20 years. And yes, so often I see beginners that do have issues. So this is funny as it is, also kind of some serious points I picked up.
Okay, number one being don't let the strings ring. This is something I've yelled about on my channel the whole fucking time. You're up here, you know, doing some stuff up here, and then you got these guys are just flapping in the breeze. Usually it's a combination of a couple things. Number one, shitty technique. Number two, maybe the bass player's not aware of what's going on because he's got an underpowered amp at rehearsal and nobody can hear him. So when you come into the studio, that becomes a big problem. It's like, well, why does this sound like shit? It's like, because Bozo on the fucking bass didn't bother to practice, didn't bother to learn muting technique, and the whole record just winds up sounding like a giant fucking disaster because he can't bring it when he needs to.
Absolutely. I find that, yeah, when you're playing with a band, when it's, rehearsal, it's loud, it's great. You don't often realize that a string's ringing, and it sounds okay. Then you come to record and you're like, this sounds like crap, why? And then you isolate the bass and there's all this kind of, there's all that.
On, yeah.
And so you have to learn how to use your thumb, your extra fingers, the rest of your left hand to stop what's not going on so that you get just one string and not the rest, because you might not hear it in the mix, but the mix doesn't sound good and you don't know why.
Right. And that's, yeah, again, that's going to be out of key strings flapping in the breeze. A lot of bass guitar is not necessarily about what notes you are playing, but what you're not playing. That's what's more important, really, in my opinion, anyway.
Absolutely.
You know, good control, good technique is going to be way more important than playing flashy. Number two, don't use old strings.
The number of times that people come into the studio and they've not changed the strings in a year, and it sounds like they're playing with toilet roll over the strings. It's awful.
What the silly Brits try to say is that's toilet paper to the uninitiated. Yes, toilet roll. What the fuck is that? Anyway, this is the thing. I mean, like, old dead strings on a guitar can sound actually pretty half decent, but when you get into bass guitar, you're going to lose a lot of the attack and spank and everything else that makes, you know, the guitar much more expressive. So it could ultimately be you wind up losing a lot of definition on the bass in the mix, especially with older dead strings. You can do a little bit of a workaround by boiling the strings, but I really wouldn't recommend it. Generally, when you're making a recording, you want your instrument to sound the best it possibly can. So that means pony up, motherfuckers, and fucking spend some money on new strings, you cheap bastards.
Something that's worth mentioning there is, bass strings are expensive.
No, they're not, you cheap fucks!
If you go to somewhere like Thomann and get their 40 or 45 gauge bass strings, you can buy them in bulk for like $5 a pack, not 50. If you want the higher grade strings, like the Ernie Balls, the Diodarios and stuff, great, they are more expensive. So what I do is for practice days where I'm just in my bedroom woodshedding, or if I'm in the rehearsal room in the band, use the cheap ones, and then when it's recording time, pay the money.
Sure, fair enough. I mean, you're paying for a record, you might as well pay a few extra bucks and get a very decent set of strings.
So it's a nice little hack there. And another thing is that with old strings, to get the brightness, I find myself playing harder, way harder, and I start kind of shredding through my fingers. So to avoid that, fresh strings, suddenly you're not bleeding and blistering everywhere.
There you go. But in order for that to happen, you'd have to practice. 3, with active bass guitars, don't crank everything.
So if you've got an old school passive bass, like, a J bass, P bass, what you usually do for rock and metal is you just turn up everything, and that's great. If you've got a bass that's active, and what that means is it's got something like a 9-volt battery, don't do that, because it sounds like shit.
Yeah, exactly. This is a 3-band EQ, and you can like boost a little bit, cut a little bit, and whatnot. Generally, and this Schecter here is great. It's got a center detent, so you know exactly where the zero position is. Generally, when I'm recording anyway on an octave bass, I'll have everything zeroed out. I won't be adding anything. I'll be doing that, in the mix, so to speak, with a little bit of post processing and whatnot. Mostly, one thing I'm doing to more than anything is just figure out what pickup I think sounds best with whatever song I'm using. Yeah, sometimes a little bit of both. Sometimes it's the bass speaker. Sometimes we get a little bit more definition up here, our bass speaker, bass pickup, and then whatever, with the bridge pickup here. Sometimes that'll work a little bit better too. It really depends on the type of music you're playing. The best idea is to experiment around a little bit and don't be just dead set on one thing, because you just never know what's going to work. Number 4, don't play with your fingers unless you can bring it. Yep. Okay, I'll defer to Adam.
So I've been a fan of bands like Rush and guys like that, where you really attack the thing for years and years and years. And so I've been doing that a long time. But if you're like, oh, purists only play with the fingers, make sure you can actually bring the high harmonics out. Because if you play super soft, you can probably barely hear that on this microphone. Yeah. Which means, what's the bass amp gonna do? It's
gonna sound like shit. Or even if you're recording direct, it's gonna sound weak. I've definitely had that happen where I've had guys come into the studio and they're playing fingerstyle and they're just barely touching the strings, and it's like, what the fuck is this? What are we supposed to do with this? There's no fucking beef there. There's no attack. There's no overwhelming sense of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Authority?
Yeah, there we go. Great. Yeah, playing bass with authority. Instead, it just sounds timid. And remember, you're trying to play metal. You're trying to sound larger than life. And when you got the guitar player sounding larger than life, you got the drummer sounding larger than life, you got the singer doing the trying to sound larger than life, whatever. And then you got the bass player doing this. It's just going to sound weak.
Yep. No shame in using a pick. I use a pick all the time, even though I can.
Yeah. I just like to make a point there. Yeah, if anybody's saying, well, you have to play with fingers, you can't play with pick, I just like to say to those people, shut the fuck up! Number 5, don't play flashy unless it's your turn.
So many young bass players that I see, they want to do that all the time, and they want to be the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh, look at me, I'm so awesome. Yeah, right, that happens with bass.
Sounds like Guitar Center. I spent years learning how to do all that kind of stuff, so sure, I can. I mean, I've got this 7-string bass aura of a thing, and if I'm doing like progressive...
You think he's compensating for something?
Yeah. Small hands. But, sure. If I'm in some sort of progressive thing and there's space in part of the mix for me to do the like nice high, that kind of thing, great. If there isn't, don't. 90% of what I do is because that's what's called for, to let the other guys shine until it's the time that everybody turns around and goes, go. Exactly. Then pull it out.
Yeah, that's, what is that? Called rhythm section. Oh yeah, right. It forms a role in the band. It's just kind of a nice idea to stay the fuck out of the way and let the guitar players do the wanking, and you and the drummer lay down the beat and keep everything grounded. Number 6, don't turn up unprepared. Oh, fuck me. Okay, this is a story of my life. How many records I've seen go down the toilet because the bass player showed up and didn't practice. You guys have heard me say this ad nauseum. Let's get Adam's thoughts on this.
It's probably reflecting exactly what Glenn would say on this, that even though the bass is quote-unquote easier than a lot of the guitar parts, it's not, because it has to be on time, it has to be perfectly on the changes, everything has to be absolutely solid, which means that you have to rehearse at home, you have to be ready. If there have been any last-minute changes to the song, make sure you know them. And the number of times I've had a band come in, the bass player gets halfway through a song and they start spending time discussing, I thought we did that bit, no, I thought we did that bit. And then I grab it off them, I track the part and then go, there you go.
That tends to really piss them off.
Really good.
I've done that before too. Just like, give me that fucking thing, jeez.
I try not to do that because I don't like upsetting people, but sometimes it's just the thing where it's like, you're paying for the session, this is a part that should go like this because here's what the guitar is. Let's go.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, like, I don't know how many times it's like the bass player will be humming along and then first change. Oh, what are we doing there? And then you punch that in, then you get a next change. Oh, what are we doing there? What that means is you have not learned the fucking song. If you can't play the song all the way through without fucking it up, don't come into the studio! And number 7, and this one's the most important of all, guys, especially the bass players, please pay attention here. Don't whiz on the electric fence. Oh man, that's beautiful.